the informative website www.lowdosenaltrexone.org, and naltrexone is Naltrexone. When you take low dose naltrexone at bedtime, which blocks your opioid receptors for a few hours in the middle of the night, it is believed to upregulate vital elements of your immune system by increasing your body's production of metenkephalin and endorphins, your natural opioids, hence improving immune function. Dr. Bert Berkson is an expert on the regimen. For more information about his findings and successes using this combination, please review this previous article. Mercury detox. Mercury is clearly a neurotoxic poison that should be avoided, so avoiding eating fish and refusing or removing mercury dental amalgams are also important aspects. Certain supplements can also help eliminate mercury from your system, such as chlorella and OSR, oxidative stress reliever, developed by Dr. Boyd Haley. And this is a big one, address early childhood emotional traumas. And this is me saying that. If you look into any of Louise L. Hay's work when she's talking about your diseases and its connection to an emotional issue within the body. Like, for example, if you have an issue with your legs, like as it is for my mother, her legs, how do you say that? I want to say natural talent for walking, but her motor skills when it comes to walking ended up very quickly falling apart over the years. So she hasn't walked now maybe for about like 5 years. This tends to be connected to a problem that you've dealt with within your life, and usually in your childhood, that is making it hard for you to move forward. And you can look at any health issue that you have and see how it's connected emotionally. Like if you're having stomach problems, it can be connected to you not being able to handle something. You just cannot stomach something. If you have a throat issue, look at the words, pay attention to the words that you're using and see if they are very offensive to other people, or very attacking, or very pessimistic. Because I found within my own life, when I've had those moments in my life where I've been very angry and I've called people a lot of names and I've just been very mean and very cruel in the way that I was speaking, I would just start to get sore throats all the time. And when I stopped doing that stopped happening. It very, all of that, your health very, very much directly correlates to what is happening within you mentally, how you are treating other people, and how you're treating yourself emotionally. It's very important. So he's saying, last but certainly not least, in my experience with MS patients, there is nearly always a precipitating traumatic emotional event that causes your immune system to crash, leading to the disease. Just as vitamin D deficiency seems to be present in most cases of autoimmune disease, there is also typically an emotional element involved. More often than not, some form of hidden emotional wound can be found in patients suffering with autoimmune diseases like MS. Typically, this wounding occurred at a very young age, almost always before the age of 7, typically before the age of 5. Issues related to this event need to be addressed by using an effective energy psychology tool like the Emotional Freedom Technique, EFT, but only with the help of an experienced practitioner. So that's the end of his article. I love Dr. Mercola. He brings a wealth of information every single day. And now we're over an hour, and I just have to embrace that. We're over an hour. That's just the way things are. This is a longer episode today. I like to keep it under an hour, but this is very, very important information. So here we are, June 1st. Can you believe we have hit June already? It was like yesterday that I was saying Happy New Year. Like, absolutely crazy. I really wanted to cover this, vitamin D, the sun, and a little bit about chemtrails. We didn't get a lot into it, but that's okay. That's also, I think it's pretty obvious if you look into chemtrails. Just Google chemtrails, and there are so many places that you can find information about it. David Icke's forum, Alex Jones's forum, Infowars.com, which is Alex Jones's place, Project Camelot, Project Avalon, Freeman, just the same people that I tend to always talk about anyway. I believe Dr. Rauni Luukkonen-Kilde also talks about chemtrails just to a little bit. And Gabrielle Stahler, in her video with Project Camelot, addresses a little bit about the chemtrails and how they block out the positive the amazing benefits from the sun and let in the aggressive, harmful rays of the sun. So there's so much more to this. And I can say that about absolutely everything that's happening right now. When you hear an official story, there is so much more to it, my friends. There is a world behind the quote unquote official story. The sad thing is that so many people just don't question it. I had a short conversation. I don't think this person has written back yet, where my friend Mike had actually put up the link to the MZEA article that was talking about how the sun is very beneficial and we've been lied to, basically. You know, the article that I read first when we opened the show today. And his response was, you know, this is a bunch of crap. You know, it's obvious that it causes skin problems, yada, yada, yada. And something he said really struck with me, where he was talking about sunblock and how I didn't get the impression he's an advocate of sunblock, but I got the impression that he was okay with it. And he was saying, I don't know what's in sunblock. And of course I had to write back to that, because I was just like, this is part of the problem with humanity. This is why we have so many issues, is that people don't know and ultimately don't care what they're putting in their bodies. And I'm not saying, you know, we've had this conversation before. I'm not saying, you know, you need to be 100%, you know, raw food all the time, you know, no junk food, no this, no fast food, no whatever else. And I don't recommend junk food and fast food, but I'd be lying if I said I didn't enjoy a bag of Tostitos once in a while, you know, and there's nothing wrong with that. I think what it really comes down to, that's our humanness, right? I think what it really comes down to is what you're doing even 75% of the time. If you're, you know, and I do every morning, if you're juicing organic carrots every morning, if you're eating, you know, sprouting your own seeds and nuts and grains, you know, if you're eating, you're not eating aspartame, if you're not drinking alcohol, if you're not smoking, this is so helpful. You know, if you don't eat a bag of chips every day, you know, that's so important. It's what we do at least 75% of the time, I would say. You know, there was a diet that my mom went through a bevy of diets. And I'd like to say that, since we are talking a lot about health today, even though it's more predominantly about vitamin D, you know, I have to express my distaste for the Atkins diet. My mother was on it at one point. I don't know for how long, maybe for about a month or something. I would attribute part of this to the issue that she has now, the MS, and also my own personal health. I was on Atkins when I was about 23 for about 10 months. I lost 80 pounds. But I mean, well, I could tell that in another show, but I'll tell it now. It changed my mental outlook on things, not in a good way. As soon as I started losing weight, but I was eating all this crap food still. I was still eating meats, and I wasn't caring where the meat was coming from. And also, if you look into meats and you look into raw foods, meat helps to create more acid in the body, which connects meat to osteoporosis. Because basically you end up, if, you know, I don't know the exact, you know, but if the acids are higher in the body, number one, if the body is more acidic, you're more prone to cancers. Cancer cannot live in an alkaline body. If you're eating a lot of meat and you're like pissing out these acids, you're actually pissing out calcium, you know, so it ends up being correlated. Meat ends up being correlated directly to osteoporosis. So I was eating tons of cheese, tons of meat, and I was actually doing it with a friend at the time. She was eating a lot more meat and cheese than I was. And I thought I was eating a ridiculous amount. Because I was still trying, you know, they tell you in Atkins not to eat fruit, basically. That's awful. You know, problems have been caused by people not getting that natural sugar from strawberries and blueberries. And there are immense benefits to eating the really colorful stuff, you know, strawberries and blueberries, the antioxidants, you know, that real deep colored stuff. So good for you. It's unbelievable. You know, so to be in a diet that actually tells you don't eat that, it's awful. So I was on it for about 10 months and I lost just over 80 pounds. And my mental outlook was changing to a very, very horrible outlook. I started seeing people that were fat or obese or what society considers overweight to be this disgusting thing. How could they treat themselves like that? How could they treat their bodies like that? It was appalling. I was disgust. I ultimately ended up being disgusted with myself because of the way my outlook was changing. And I do believe we are what we eat. So I believe the crazy amount of meat and cheese that I was eating, which is just it's all animal product, right? And I was eating a crazy amount of aspartame too, because Atkins wasn't against aspartame. That's one of the biggest problems I have with it. So I was eating this special cheesecake thing that I would make every night, and I was eat it. And actually, I'll give you the recipe. It's really, really good. It's you just take like Philadelphia cream cheese, and you take real whipping cream, and you whip up the cream, and then you add the cheese. I believe it's been years. It's been like 7 years since I've made it, and you whip it all up together so that it's creamy, and then kind of like a pudding almost. And you also add, well, he was okay with aspartame, so I added a lot of like NutraSweet and all that garbage and Equal and everything. Please don't do that. Please have respect for your bodies enough to not do that. And use like an organic cane sugar, or use honey. Use a raw honey. I mean, there are apiaries everywhere and an apiary, if you don't know, if I'm using the right word, is where they house a lot of bees, right? And bees are amazing. So, so just honey, Philadelphia cream cheese, and real whipping cream. And I don't recommend it as a regular thing because dairy is just awful. But we really are fed an array of awful foods for us, especially considering we're not meant to drink milk from a cow that's meant for baby calves. So, I can greatly attribute my mom's issue now with Atkins, and I can definitely attribute my own issues, because I found after I stopped being on Atkins, after I stopped with the horrendous mental outlook, it's amazing that I would think that way about people. I immediately started having thyroid issues. My thyroid slowed right down. My adrenals got all messed up. My hormones are messed up because of it. And also lymph node issue. And it's, please don't ever do Atkins. I love you too much. I don't care who you are. I love you. I do not want you to do Atkins. It is really, really awful. I'm so anti-Atkins. It's amazing. But once as a child, I was on, young, before teenage years, I was on so many diets and stuff because I started to get chubby when I was 11. What society considers chubby. So I hated myself for that, because society tells you to hate yourself for that. But yeah, so I wanted to put that aside in there because I'm very anti-Atkins, especially considering, the high meat and the high cheese and the high aspartame that he tells people. So if you're going to try any recipe and it calls for aspartame, there are a bevy of options. Even regular white refined sugar is way better for you than Atkins. And stay away from hydrogenated corn syrup and like all those fats and everything. I mean, hydrogenated fats and high fructose corn syrup. Seriously, if you want me to write you a list, I'll write you a list of the amazing things none of us should ever consume. But that's what I really think. If you're taking care of yourself like 75% of the time, the other 25% of the time, you have a glass of wine with dinner, and I personally don't drink, since my forays into cannabis, the alcohol is disgusting. Especially considering just one sip of something gives me a headache and a stomach ache and makes me feel awful. So if you feel like having a glass of wine once in a while, if you feel like having a bag of chips once in a while, if you feel like getting McDonald's once in a while, it really, that 10% or that 25% doesn't end up mattering the way that the 75% ends up mattering. And since today's topic is vitamin D, the sun, and a little bit about chemtrails, I cannot speak enough good about vitamin D3. And so yeah, if you can't get out in the sun, get to, get to a Shoppers or something like that, get to a grocery store and look at what they have. It's better if you can find something that's like organic D3 or raw D3 or something. I'm not exactly sure about so much of the process also. But